Thank you. Well, actually, until some days ago, I was quite optimistic about this council, that there might actually be some steps ahead. You know, there were some positive developments, and well, I thought that doesn't happen so often, so I was quite optimistic. You know, on Brexit, there was a sort of agreement, even with some hiccups, but there was a step forward. On the Eurozone, there was some movement, and even on migration, there were some steps, you know, in the right direction, looking at the Commission, for example, and ECJ court cases. But then that didn't last so long. On Brexit, even though we had an agreement, then it was put into question in London. And that, of course, raises a lot of questions about any sort of agreement that we're making here, that you're making here with your counterparts. And I would say especially also about the future relationship, because if you can't trust one another, if you're not sure that whatever you agree is actually going to hold, then this is going to put a major strain on any future relation. I would also add, not just to the European Union, because if the UK wants to be a global player and find their new friends elsewhere, then that's going to be just as tricky, or even more tricky, because, I mean, we're used to, or well, we have a long relationship, but others might find it even more bewildering if there's this untrustworthiness on the other side. So I hope this can be clarified. I mean, we will make a very clear deal, legally binding and everything, but I hope that this will not happen again in the future. Also, Northern Ireland, and colleagues have mentioned this, is of course a crucial issue, and one that really goes onto the question of peace and living together, and this is something that will remain in the main concern of our group, but I'm sure of colleagues as well. And there we haven't squared the circle yet. We all agree there shouldn't be a hard border and whatever, so but that's nice, but it doesn't say yet how we're going to do that. Because we can't have the cake and eat it. We need to find a solution here. We need to find a solution, and there I'm with colleagues to say that to make sure that there is no restriction of rights of Irish citizens and of people on both sides of the border in Ireland, that their rights will be safeguarded. But there is no solution yet. I hope we will have a proposal soon, but for us this remains the main issue, just as much as the rights of citizens. And yeah, of course, there as well we have some important progress, it has been mentioned, but there are also important problems that have been mentioned. The rights of future partners and spouses, for example. And also already now we all hear the stories of major hiccups with the administration, where residence permits are not granted in the way they should be. So this is something that urgently needs to be addressed. And then on migration, well, there again, and it has already been mentioned as well, the letter of Tusk I did find extremely irritating, because basically in the same time as the Commission stands up for solidarity, goes to the ECJ, also has earlier been making infringement procedures, basically the Council on Tusk comes and shoots the Commission in the back. And that, I think, is not a nice way to go ahead. And I think Mr. Tusk and also I think the entirety of member states, they will have to answer some questions here, like how should this be understood if Tusk calls solidarity ineffective? How should this be understood by the Commission, who was standing firm on the ground, by this Parliament? We have actually the same parties here in this House as are in the governments, as are forming the governments in the member states. We're not a detached, totally different galaxy. We're the same political groups, the same parties, but we have managed to find an agreement in the European Parliament on the Dublin reform, on the future asylum system. Sure, it wasn't easy, but we have managed to put forward an ambitious proposal. But apparently this is ineffective, this is irrelevant for Mr. Tusk. I do find this really irritating. And also, what about the member states, who have been calling for many years for more solidarity? What about Italy? What about Greece? But in the past was Malta, Spain. It could be Poland tomorrow as well. There is no guarantee that any member state will be spared, so to say. So I'm wondering whose president Mr. Tusk is here trying to be. And I hope that this will not be reflected in the leadership meeting. And I hope indeed that the co-legislators, or rather the other co-legislator, will make progress here, because we as Parliament have been ready for a long time. And I hope as well that the heads of state and government will have a look at what EU but member states also have contributed to the misery that we see in Libya, and also what they are going to do in order to alleviate that misery. And there I think just proposing 1,000 resettlement places to come to the whole European Union, that's really a meager number, and I hope that the member states will add up a little there. Thank you.
Per il gruppo